Hey all, my name is Benjamin Carcich. I am with Building Better Games. To find out more about me elsewhere, just know that I'm someone who works with leaders in games. I try to help leaders do a better job leading their teams, shipping great games. And as a result of that, I'm now collaborating with Favreau a little bit. Favreau is my preferred work management system over all the other ones out there. I like its high degree of flexibility, the customizability. There's some cool things I think you can do with Favreau. It's just lightweight. It's really lightweight. And so for a startup, for someone who's got something very small running, I think it's a great place to kick off. I think it actually follows you way more than people believe. I think everybody always thinks you need to switch to some more, I don't know what they call it, structured or I just view them as these behemoths that end up taking over your entire organization. I don't think you ever need to do that. But when you're getting started, especially something lightweight and simple, can be very helpful. So I like Favreau for that. And this is for people who are trying to build games. They're either it's an R&D project within a larger company, it might be a startup, maybe even in just an indie project. Where do you start when it comes to process and simple systems that'll get you moving in the right direction? For me, I view there being three main artifacts that I would have if I were to start out a game with a group of people, even just a couple of us. I would say that I want a clear understanding of my game vision. That should be looking at like a PowerPoint deck, a Word doc. You could even do it in Favreau, as I'll show you in a second. A Favreau board to actually track the work and how it's moving in a very simple way where work can just flow through that system. And then finally some sort of Miro board or digital whiteboard of some kind. And I'll be walking you through those three artifacts that I have as like templates for you to use to get things rolling. So, first thing I want to say as we look at the Favreau board, I don't think you need everything that's on here if you're just starting out. And so let me first walk through who should be using what, in my opinion. Take these as guidelines, not rules. Figure it out for yourself. But I'll just break this real quick into a few different categories. If you're 1 to 3 people doing this as a side hobby, I recommend you have just a very, very few things. One, you need some sort of game vision alignment mechanism North Star. You could do that in Favreau, like I've got here, where you have a simple like, hey, here's our North Star, here's what we're trying to do. You might have some goals or priorities or pillars or whatever it is. We'll go into those in a little bit more detail. I would have a Miro board for you, a place for whoever's working on it to come together, to collaborate, to have meetings, to brainstorm, to do whatever you want to do. Like there's some fun stuff here, and again, you can find the link to this. This is just a publicly accessible thing right now. And then the last one I would have is just a simple development board. Cool, we've got an iteration or whatever. What are we working on? Whether it's an iteration or you're flow-based, you might be flow-based for something this size. So just like work is just continually flowing through. What's the work in the backlog? What are we pulling into progress? What are we testing? What are we reviewing? What's done? You could probably combine testing and review at this scale as well. You're welcome to do that. But that's it. Just a game vision, the game vision board, the development board, a Miro board. With those things, I think you can get stuff rolling. Be wary of this, though, because one of the things that's easy to have happen is you have a high-level game vision, and then you have, so that would be captured here in this, game vision deck overview. You have your low level, the tasks we're working on, and you never connect the two. This is where if you're going to do this, I do recommend having something like here, hey, here are the top 5 player experience related priorities we're trying to achieve. You want to talk about that through, this is what we think is going to engage the player, this is the experience we're trying to create for the player, why they're going to find it compelling, or the emotions we're trying to inspire in the player. You want those things captured if you're going to go very, very lightweight. Okay, so next, let's say you're doing this full time, you have a larger group, let's say it's 3 to 10 people, they're going at this together, you're still not getting paid. Still, I'd add a little bit more to this. So again, you have your game vision board, and maybe your game vision deck where you kind of go through some of that in more detail. You're going to have a simple development board. Same thing as before, whether it's iteration based or flow based. You're walking through, backlog in progress, testing, review, etc. You have your Miro boards, the same things as before. This one, I would explicitly add the player value board. And this is actually, again, we're going to take it off of game vision necessarily. You could leave some stuff up here in these top 5 priorities, but we're now going to be looking at player experience through the lens of how do we prioritize this against each other, and what are we actually focusing on? And that should connect to any feature or asset that you're working on. Everything should be able to be tied back to this is the player experience we're trying to create. This at the slightly larger scale you're at is very important, because now you can't just have that abstract high-level vision and just rely on people to figure out in the middle layer before they start doing tasks. It's easy for even a group of 8 people to have people going off and doing tasks without realizing how it does connect back to that high-level game vision. So now we're going to make that more explicit. All right, let's say you're funded, you're looking for funding, but you're still pretty small. You're less than 15 people in early dev. You want to keep things pretty lightweight. There's probably a bunch of tools you're going to use, and I'm not going to go into all of them, but I'm, again, focusing on the process of game development itself. So for this group of people, I would say you still want your game vision board. Again, I would probably have a game vision deck here because it has some things like the FAQ and some established constraints. It can lay things out, keep it separate, and have someone be a clear owner of that document. Yep, you still have your development board. You still have your Miro board where people can work. You might have multiple Miro boards at this scale. Although the more you can keep it all in one, it can actually be helpful, assuming it doesn't become too crazy and chaotic. And now you're also adding something, a company management board. This might capture things like your fundraising, what are the company management to-dos. Whenever you're running a company, so if you're funded, or you're looking for funding, you're a company. There's a bunch of stuff, and the reason this is number 2, even though I don't have it in the smaller groups, the smaller, like if you're doing this as a hobby, it's because you don't have a company at that point, really. As soon as you have a company, the company management becomes a very big deal. It is very, very easy to not realize that, like, oh, you had to pay taxes, or there's this regulation about, and you don't know how to hire that person, and we have to start looking for like a contract to do this thing, and who's our legal advice, and there's all this stuff. Capture that. Don't lose it. So get your company management to-dos figured out. Get your fundraising stuff figured out if that's something that you're going to be end up doing. And don't forget this part. It's easy to forget this part. Don't forget it. As soon as you have a company, whoever the founders are or the CEO is, you're now a business person as much as you're a contributor or leader of a game team. And you have to take that role as manager of a business seriously. The last thing I would add, you're funded. You should have a playtest board. You should at least know how and when you're going to be doing internal playtests and what you're hoping to get out of them. You should probably be thinking about external playtests, even if that's lightweight friends and family stuff. Heck, I've got like a 2-person project right now that's thinking about external and internal playtests. They don't have a company, they don't have anything, but they're already thinking about those things. And also, you may have an investor playtest or a stakeholder playtest that you're thinking about and planning for. These can be helpful. So, if you have those, like you can just open these up. But you want to be thinking about playtesting a lot more because you've got real money in this now. Somebody's like invested money, and it's time to make this real. And to do that, like in the modern world, you have to be getting feedback and you have to be watching players play your game. That's almost more important than the feedback piece. Watch players play your game. So again, if you do all these things, you should have your game vision. You're going to have that development. You're going to connect them with the player value board. You're going to be watching and making sure you don't fall behind on the company management side. There's some different stuff over on the corner of know your shutdown costs, have an accountant on hand, have a lawyer that you can call. Is there a tax schedule? What are your business accounts, like expense list, burn rate? These things are stuff you want to be keeping track of. And then play testing. Okay. Let's say you're in production or getting closer to launch, or you're just more than 15 people anywhere in dev. Now I'd recommend basically the full stack of this. So again, we start with a game vision. This is always where we start. It is the most important thing. It is the thing that we always forget. It's the thing that gets out of date. It's supposed to align the team so we're all making better decisions. Make sure you have a game vision. That game vision, in the README that I'll provide with this, I have some things that you should avoid around the game vision. Be very careful of not falling into some traps around it. But broadly, this is the impact we want our game to have. This is the player we're trying to attract and these sorts of things. So game vision deck is the most important. We're also going to have your company management board, same reasons as before, except now, you might be deeper in fundraising, you're getting closer to ship. You're going to have that player value. So now we have the game vision. We're connecting it to the player experience we're trying to create. We're going through that step by step. And then we connect into development. There might be multiple development workflows here because as you get larger, you may have multiple teams. You can easily break them into completely different boards. In Favreau, this is pretty trivial. And then you're also going to have your playtesting board. You probably do have an investor playtest now or a stakeholder playtest, these sorts of things. And finally, I would also say that as you're getting into this space, you should be thinking about community and marketing. Honestly, you should probably be thinking about community very early on in your development. Like playtests and community are going to some extent go together, but really you're going to be thinking about building that community up and the marketing plan for this. And that might be something you're doing in collaboration with a publisher if you have one, or it might be something you're doing on your own, but you don't want to skip these steps. We are not in a world anymore where if you build it, they will come. Like if you make a great game, everybody's just going to show up. I think there's a lot of good games that get no attention because they were not marketed and players didn't find them. Don't rely on hope as a strategy when it comes to community and marketing. Take it seriously. So those are the different boards I would use depending on where you're at in development. Again, guidelines, not rules. You can pick and choose. You can build your own. One of the things I like about Favreau is how customizable it is, how easily it can move across these things. So there's a quick guide to get you going on this. Just to add a little bit more detail of how I might approach this. Let's talk about game vision for a second. So again, we want to avoid some traps. You want to have a clear picture of where you're trying to go. One of the biggest reasons games fail is the founders think they're aligned and they are not. There are three major vision issues that emerge when you're creating a vision. One, people use a conceptual language model to figure out their vision. This is when you talk about your game being unique and exciting and a bunch of words that apply to a whole ton of games and don't in any way make yours special. Nobody's trying to make the boring, mundane game out there that there's 10 copies of. Everybody's trying to make a unique, exciting game, but that's where we often end up with our visions. We're making a unique, exciting game. The other one that's really common is called prototype theory. It's when you take your game and you say like, I'm trying to make Halo crossed with Candy Crush. And the problem with this is it seems like it's really descriptive, but there's 1,000 different versions of that game. What is it that is going to draw a player to your game? That's what you're trying to capture in the vision. What is it that makes someone go like, oh, I would like to play that game? And I get it, some people would be attracted to anything that's Halo or anything that's Candy Crush because they're fans of that genre, but they'll also likely be disappointed because if they love Halo, they might not like your cross of Halo with Candy Crush. And so be careful of prototype theory. Be careful of using examples from other games or other genres as like, oh, we're crossing, we're crossing FPS with strategy in a unique blend of blah, blah, blah. Congratulations. Now you prototyped in conceptual language and you said something that sounds really good. And again, maybe you want this stuff in your pitch deck. I'll leave that to the people who are good at pitch decks to figure out. This isn't actually aligning your team. So you want to be aligning your team. Start with a strong game vision. The last version of a game vision that really sucks is just a game design doc or like a list of features. These are all the features we're going to build. There's a million different ways you can build any feature. And how they all come together is what matters, not what features you have listed. So be wary of those three things: conceptual language, prototype theory, and feature lists as proxying for a game vision that actually says this is what we are trying to do. This is the North Star. This is where we should all be focused. And if we don't understand this or we find misalignment in this, we should go work that out as a team. Next, goals. What are the more discrete chunks? Maybe you could view this as strategies. Some people have a lot of different ways that they like try to frame all that, but it's just like, look, this is what we're doing to achieve our vision. These are the major things we need to do next. These are the strategies we're taking. This is how we're going to bring in players, or this is how we're going to make this all fit together or get attention to it or whatever it is. Next, you have the pillars. I really like having pillars. I call them very optional. Not everybody likes them. And by the way, you can also do this in Favreau if you want. I have goals, pillars, top 5 priorities listed here. But if you're going through the deck, the pillars are not about this is a thing we're going to do. This is something we value. So maybe if you're making a competitive game, competitive integrity is a pillar of what we're trying to do. Like, our anti-cheat has to be really good. The game needs to be more deterministic, less random. These sorts of things are, as people go about making decisions, as engineers design things, it's something we want them thinking about. It's like, hey, it's one of the most important things for our competitive game is the competitive integrity of that game. Maybe the next one on a game like that might be performance, like a high frame rate is a big deal versus high visual fidelity. And so you're talking through these things. For a story-driven game, it might be the absolute opposite. Maybe the most important thing is the thematic cohesion of the story or how you've integrated lore, like an IP that you have, into the game. Those things might be what matter most. So when you're thinking about pillars, that's what you're thinking about. And then you just have the top priorities for your organization. Think about these through that lens of player experience. What is the player doing? What is the emotion that is being engaged? How are they relating to the product and the experience that they can now have that they couldn't before as you work through these things? This is not a list of stuff. Other things I don't mind having in a vision deck, FAQ. If you're the person who owns this, you might get a lot of the same question. Just put it in the FAQ. Well, wait a minute. If our game is like this and the players are supposed to be attracted to this, then what does this mean? Explain that, talk through it, and after you've figured it out, write down a simple answer to it so that people know that answer. Other thing I also like to have, again, some people might disagree with me on this. Sometimes you have established constraints. Maybe you're going to be on Steam, or you're going to be a mobile game, or you're going to be, I don't know, you've decided already that based on who you've hired, we're making a first-person shooter and we're not making a strategy game. Good. It's fine to write that stuff down. It's fine to think about what the scale of the game should be and all this different stuff. If you have constraints around your systems, share that with everybody. Don't leave people in the dark around that. Last thing I have on this slide is just if you want to know a bunch about game vision, I recommend checking out Graham McAllister's website. He's done the most good work on this of anybody that I've seen. And I've got some podcast episodes that I did with him as well, so you can check those out. Last thing I'll talk through real quick is just the Miro board. There's a couple of things that I think are useful in here, and I prefer to have Favreau as the place where real stuff lives, and Miro as the place where anybody can throw out a bunch of ideas. I find Miro to be a very strong resource for brainstorming, and then you refine it down, and then you move it over to Favreau, and it's like, okay, this is the concrete stuff we've chosen to do. Some examples, so for me, hey, I've got a game vision on my Miro board that kind of again helps ground. I want to put my game vision almost everywhere so that people are constantly being brought back. In this one, hey, I've got some thoughts about what the audience should be. Fix that. I've got some thoughts about what the audience should be. Cool, great. People can take a look at that. They can argue with it. They can ask questions about it. I also think that something really valuable is a simple player, as you could call it, player journey. Sometimes called a journey map or a story map, but let's talk about what are the most important things for our game to have in order for it to be a game, for us to test it, for us to understand if it's going well or not. And then let's break out what do we think the next most important are, what do we think the next most important are. And this is just building out a simple player flow and then thinking about what might sit inside of that player flow. So you could build all this in Favreau, and I think in some cases you probably should actually have it set up so that in the player value, if you wanted to, you could use release 1, release 2, release n. But when I'm first constructing it, I like to use Miro as like the place where everybody just gets their ideas out. So then we use release 1, release 2. Another thing I have, what are your loops? What are the loops of your game? All games have loops of some kind or another, whether it's one giant loop or a lot of little loops. Most have small, really tight loops that you're doing over and over and over again, and then some medium-sized loops like levels, and then larger loops like larger chunks of the game or maybe the game itself. Every game can be broken down into these series of loops. What are your loops, and what is uncertain about the loops? Where are you hoping players get the most enjoyment? Can you focus in on building the most important loops first and making sure that they're actually enjoyable? I think a lot of people miss this step. I've seen games that were way too big that had not prototyped their core loops yet, and as a result really struggled. Again, prototype this all out. Once you have it, it becomes what ends up living inside of your development or your player value on Favreau, and that helps ground it. So just some things I like doing. If you've got some cool art for your game, this is all AI generated nonsense, but I just wanted to throw something in there for you. And again, like I said, brainstorming. Miro is really great for brainstorming stuff. Once you have it brainstormed, you can pull over, like if, let's say I had all these things and I said, okay, cool, what are the 4 most important things we could put in the game first to start getting a feel of this, if this is working or not. And if we just like, oh, it's these 4, oopsie, let me make them a different color. So we'll just make them white, and then we'll say like, cool, let's copy those into Favreau. Those are the next 4 things, next 4 abilities we're going to work on, or whatever it might be. Same thing for enemies. You could do like, oh, we want to make sure we have the grunt and the shield carrier, and we want to add a little bit more in the jungle. So there we go. We'll make these ones black. There we go. Okay, let's pull those in and add them to the Favreau board. We can put them on our feature backlog, on our asset backlog, depending on where they make sense. Last thing I'll note, I always have an escaped bug backlog living somewhere. You can build that in Favreau. It works just fine. It's very customizable. And I think you keep track of those bugs. Don't let that backlog grow too big when it comes to stuff that really negatively impacts the experience you're having. I think that about wraps it up. So there you go. If you want to start up a game, make sure you've got your game vision board. Make sure you've got your Miro board. Make sure you've got your development. And then as you grow or need more, as you become more real as a game, think about things, especially the player value connection between the game vision and development. Make sure you're taking care of your company management. Make sure you're thinking about play testing. And probably earlier than you think, you should be thinking about how you're building your community and how you're going to do marketing. If you do all these things well, I think you're going to be off on a better foot than many studios out there that think that building games is all about just throwing a bunch of features and assets together and hoping that it all comes together. So think about this better. You're going to have a better shot at succeeding. All right. Hope this has been helpful. If you haven't, check out Favreau. I think it's a great tool. I think it should get more attention than it does. It's all really customizable. So with that, I will wrap things up. If you're interested in more content from me, check out buildingbettergames.gg. Check out the Favreau startup solution. I think it's a good starting point, and it'll get you moving in the right direction. Thanks. Bye-bye.